Bilderberg, if you've not heard of it, because maybe it's less well known now, that's what Davos used to be in the good old days when CEOs and presidents could come together with a little bit of discretion. Well, they're meeting for the first time. What's their agenda? What are they going to do when they get together? And do you think that the world's most powerful people coming together at secret conferences or even clandestine or somewhat opaque conferences is the solution to the problems of ordinary people? Let's get into it. Bilderberg is back with a vengeance. That's not the right attitude. After a pandemic gap of 2 years, the Elite Global Summit is being rebooted in a security-drenched hotel in Washington, D.C. When I hear the words Elite Global Summit, I think that might not be the best solution to the world's problems, because I think elite global summits have caused all these problems. Is being rebooted in a security-drenched hotel in Washington, D.C. with a high-powered guest list that includes the heads of NATO, the CIA, GCHQ, the US National Security Council, 2 European Prime Ministers, tech billionaires, and Henry Kissinger. The participant list is rife with military advisors, one of which is a former chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff and some hefty cogs from the Washington war machine. Look at the ingredients of this conference. Military advisors, energy companies, politicians, tech companies. Do you think they're all doing it in order to do nothing? Right, let's just go to that conference and then we'll just go home again. They're not skiing and like paddleboarding and stuff. They're going to be talking about their shared interests, forming and cementing relationships and coming up with ideas that will ultimately impact all of your lives. What I dislike about the way that the media render stories like the Ukraine-Russia war is, oh, this is just this isolated thing. Russia done this, Ukraine responded. Now we're just going to go and help. Put a sticker in your window, will ya? That's the best thing. Like, clearly these things are connected by the interwoven cartilage of political ideologies and economic necessity and economic ambition. You can observe the influence and shadow of these matters within the confines of this conference. Bilderberg is sometimes dismissed as a talking shop or a crazed imagining of conspiracy theorists. Well, of course it is, because you have to be dismissive about things like this, otherwise it attracts too much scrutiny. But in reality, it's a major diplomatic summit attended this year, as ever, by extremely senior transatlantic politicians from the US Commerce Secretary to the President of the European Council. Many consider it an older, less flashy Davos. The fact that the security agencies are as embedded in this process as they are means that it will never be, of course, subject to the sort of scrutiny that would be necessary if you had a government that was truly representative of the people and agencies within that government that were there to protect your rights and investigate potential corruption and centralising elitist forces. It's never going to happen. You'll never get to scrutinise or even understand what happens in this context. And even though probably there are other layers of conference and conflab that's beyond even this that we don't even hear about, we don't even hear about their existence, it's pretty clear from this lineup, from the topics that they're discussing, that it will have an impact on the way that you live your life. And it's not an impact that you can resist, oppose, or even be engaged in a discourse with. When constructing a counter-argument to the way that power operates in your life now, I think it's important to remember what Edward Snowden said about the worst conspiracies being in plain sight. Here are the most powerful people in the world, some of the most powerful security agencies, financial interests, getting together to discuss subjects like global realignment, the Ukraine, potentially cryptocurrencies and alternative means of transaction. You don't need to get into the owls and the lizards and the human sacrifices. The fact is this is what power's doing that you can observe. So if that's what's visible, yeah, I imagine there is other stuff that goes on, but there's in a way no point getting too caught up in that, because it oddly makes the people that talk about it look ridiculous rather than focusing in on what's observable. Look, these are observable transactional spaces where the heads of GlaxoSmithKline and Pfizer are meeting up without press scrutiny with Wall Street investors. What do you imagine that they're doing in there, like painting each other's nails and giggling and singing songs from Greece? They're not, are they? They're saying, well, this would be helpful and this kind of legislation would be helpful in order, and why don't we put this person in this position? You know, I'm obviously being reductive, but they're not sat there like, picking each other's spots. Formed in the mid-50s as a joint project of British and US intelligence, the conference has kept its cards so close to its chest that the world's press has given up trying to get a glimpse of them. Even those diligent investigators at CNN and MSNBC and Fox have given up trying to investigate the corporate skullduggery that goes on at Bilderberg. Perhaps in the 1950s, when you had all the President Men-style investigative journalists trying to understand what was going on and feeling like they were representatives of the people against the establishment, maybe then they were trying to get a glimpse. Now they're not trying to get a glimpse out. They're inside, wearing the hoods and that. And of course, holding court at the hotel bar will be Klaus Schwab's mentor, Henry Kissinger, who has been attending Bilderbergs since 1957. The Prince of Realpolitik has been the ideological godfather of Bilderberg for as long as anyone can remember, and he's recently co-authored a book, The Age of AI, with Bilderberg Steering Committee member Eric Schmidt, the former head of Google, and this year's Washington conference is notably rammed with AI luminaries. Bilderberg knows that however the global realignments play out and whatever a reset global financial system looks like, the shape of the world will be determined by big tech. And if the end game is continuity of government, as the agenda suggests, the continuity will be powered by AI. Whatever billionaire ends up making the software that runs the world, Bilderberg aims to make damn sure that it has its hand on the mouse. When I think about the agenda of this channel, partly what we're trying to engage in is the creation of a set of tools and a conversation between us where we start to understand the way that power operates, and also new ways of framing things that might otherwise be seen as ridiculous and conspiratorial. When you hear that Eric Schmidt and Henry Kissinger and Klaus Schwab and people that run Google and people that have interest in BP and MI6 and CIA are all meeting up, I think it really undermines the idea that to talk about globalist agenda and global elites running the world is somehow ridiculous, preposterous, juvenile, stupid. It's happening. It's evidently happening. This is the venue and this is the agenda. These are the things that get discussed at the Bilderberg Group.